This video continues on from the first moves we made in the concealment phase of the mission, in which one Grenadier effectively took out 2 pods. If you'd like to review that video, click at the top. If you'd like to review the squad composition, get an in-depth analysis of who we chose, what their spec was, and why, click on the link below. Now, as with most of my videos, I'll try to keep the commentary as concise and relevant to the tactics unfolding before you as I can. I still recommend reviewing the squad composition video. It'll help you understand a little bit more of what's exactly going on in front of you. The ability I'm activating right now is called Grapple. Now, it is unique to 2 types of armor, the Wraith suit and the Spider suit, which both can be built in the Proving Grounds. One of the best things about Grapple, aside from the fact that you can ascend to tall structures, is it preserves all of your movement. As you can see, I grappled a fairly large distance, and I still retain all of my action points, opening a very wide range of tactical opportunities should the need arise. In addition to this, Wraith suits and Spider suits also provide a short boost to dodge, as well as mobility. Now, there are 2 moves that you missed between the previous video and this one being that I moved that Phantom Ranger up 1 move, and I also moved my other Grenadier on a dash, effectively taking him out as an option for this turn. So one quick note about these Archons: they are flyers that have a natural ability to dodge, making them generally harder to hit than most other mobs. When deciding who to choose to tackle this best, we discover our jack-of-all-trades sharpshooter, Hollywood, who, as I machinated over how to spec him, is actually uniquely designed specifically to tackle instances like this. Relating to the point about Archons previously, the pistol actually has a higher chance to hit them for some reason I've found. So, he's probably going to be the best man for the job here. Now, fortunately, with the way I spec'd him, he's equally suited to handle long and short-range encounters. Now, with the ability to fire 3 pistol shots per round, assuming I haven't moved, and again, this is where Grapple can become very handy. You can grapple up to a large building. You can dwindle down one particular unit, as you'll see I'm doing here in this particular case, or, should the need arise, you have a lot of targets with low health that you don't want to waste your big guns on, you can use him to pick them off without wasting a big shot from somebody else. So, with pretty much all of his shots out, the Archon is still up, but dwindled down enough that we could probably grab somebody else in here to finish off the job. Now, when weighing my options out between which of these 2 units, my Specialist or Sword Ranger, to use to finish off this Archon, I'm weighing out some of the different pros and cons. Namely, that my sword-wielding Ranger, if she gets a kill, is unable to be hit the next turn, meaning I can put her in a semi-vulnerable position here on that tree, finish off the Archon, and still be relatively safe. However, as it turns out, I really need this guy to go down to make sure that I don't have any other issues arise, and since my Specialist is far enough back that he's probably not going to get shot, I'm going to actually go with him. Also, I got really lucky in getting rapid fire with him in the AWC, so he's got 2 chances to get the hit off. If my Ranger missed, I'd be doubly screwed. Now, even with a 47% chance to hit on rapid fire, again, remember we get 2 shots, so 2 chances at rolling that 47% dice roll, which again, really statistically improves our odds. Although, in this particular case, of course, we got it on the first shot. Now, in deciding what to do with my last 2 soldier moves, I don't want to get my Phantom Ranger out of concealment, but I do want to get my Sword Ranger in a better position, and hopefully take advantage of a little bit of her firepower this turn, so that next turn I can eliminate that Archon completely and focus all of my energy on getting that Gatekeeper down before he can unleash all hell on the rest of my troops. One very awesome AWC skill that the soldier was granted was Grenadier Skill Hail of Bullets, which, as we mentioned earlier, is a guaranteed hit. On a shotgun-wielding soldier, doesn't get much better than that. So even though she's not going to get a kill and get the Untouchables benefit, she's still going to dwindle this guy down, again meaning I can probably take him out with 1 soldier's hit next turn, and then focus again on my firepower on the Gatekeeper. Quick note, Archons once hit get Battle Frenzy, giving them an extra action the next move. So I'm going to end with Overwatch on my concealed Phantom Ranger, and let's see what happens. So a very cool tactical turnaround is about to take place, largely in part due to the fact of my squad composition and how I've decided to gear them up. Here, a very hard-hitting Gatekeeper focuses on a unit with a very high dodge. Being behind high cover and wearing a Wraith suit, giving another 25 to dodge, means she's a 65% chance not to get hit. And right after that, the Archon walks up and gets sliced to death thanks to her Bladestorm ability. So that solved my dilemma about who was going to finish off that Archon, and now I can devote all of my actions and resources to finishing off this Gatekeeper on this move. Status effects Burning, Disorient, or Acid can have very negative effects on your soldiers' ability to perform in combat, namely graying out their entire action bar so the only thing they can do is move. This is why having a specialist with a gremlin heal or a medkit can be extremely useful, not only providing a one-spot massive heal, but also removing these effects which will take your soldier completely out of the fight. I go into a little bit more detail about why I choose the Gremlin heal ability over just pure medkits in the squad composition video. So now we want to tactically position our soldiers on this next turn to hopefully take out this gatekeeper in one fell swoop. Now if you've watched my squad composition video, you'll understand the tactics that are about to be employed here a little bit better. 2 Grenadiers, while very similarly spec'd in terms of Shredder, for instance, are spec'd differently enough that they serve tactically important roles. This one that I'm moving up here is my opener. He's got Hail of Bullets, a guaranteed to hit skill, and holo targeting, in addition to Shredder. Meaning, he can effectively open on a target, get a guaranteed hit, shred off some armor, and apply holo targeting, effectively make a very hard target like this into a soft one. Now we want to make that soft target even softer. This is why having 2 Grenadiers with shredding becomes incredibly useful. So he's got holo targeting, giving this guy an increased chance to hit. Now this other Grenadier I've given Chain Shot. Chain Shot, with a reduced chance to aim on already poor aim Grenadiers, is a risky skill to take. But since I've already holo targeted him up, chances are I'll probably have some success. Not only shred off some armor, but do a devastating amount of damage in the process. So having these complementing Grenadiers has given me the opportunity to get 2 really heavy blows off on this gatekeeper right off the bat. So with only 2 soldiers on this turn, I was able to effectively turn a gatekeeper into a one-hit death. Now it's just a matter of deciding who is going to finish him off. So I am deciding to go with my Sword Ranger because she's in the best position and I still don't want to take my Phantom Ranger out of concealment. One nice thing about the Sword Ranger, of course, is that because of Untouchable, if she gets this kill, she will unable to be hit in the event that moving forward a little bit will reveal another pod. She also has the mobility that if they do reveal another pod and I feel that it's too much, she can run back to the rest of the squad, go into Overwatch with the rest of them, and hopefully be in a better position. One thing to note here as well, even with the Sword Ranger, you always want to attack Sectopods and Gatekeepers at range, because on death, they unleash a fire explosion that will damage pretty severely anybody unlucky enough to be caught within its radius. Now a couple tactical notes while we make these next few moves. As with all XCOM games, you generally want to move from cover to cover when advancing, the only exception to this being when you know the only any combatants left are chrysalids and or faceless, since being in cover provides you no net benefit. However, seeing it is virtually impossible to know that those are the only enemy combatants you have, even with the Shadow Chamber and counting how many units you've killed, still try to use cover. Now concealed units, particularly your phantom concealed units who you use to scout, you always want to use cover. And you want to be kind of careful in moving from position to position, because anytime you even move into cover, which is within the enemy's sight radius and or you are being flanked, will reveal you. Now you notice that I've been doing a little bit of aggressive movements and dashing in spite of the fact that this isn't a timed mission. The reason I'm doing this is because I wanted to kind of showcase how a well-equipped, well-designed squad can combat even some hairy situations that you might encounter on a potentially timed mission. What they did a really great job of in XCOM 2 is kind of forcing you to push the envelope a little bit and not always play it safe, so that you will encounter these a little bit more often, which is why a little more advanced planning can pay dividends if you spend the time to think about it. Now, of course, this game was designed so that there was no cookie-cutter way of going through it, so that you could always have random chances of having a completely different squad that beat the game than previously. Instead, I merely mean to provide insights into game mechanics and strategies that will help you if you're struggling with your first couple playthroughs. That being said, I always love a squad with 2 Grenadiers. The ability to destroy cover that the AI is very smart in utilizing is invaluable. Wanting to utilize other classes, I've hybridized my medic/hacker into one unit using the spec that I outlined in the squad composition video, and the other 3 really can run the gambit depending on your style of play and the type of map that you've encountered. The 3 options I found most fruitful are Ranger, Ranger Psi, Ranger, Ranger Sharpshooter, or Ranger Psi Sharpshooter. Rangers are just still so good in that the Scout can still be a glass cannon to unleash whenever, whereas the Blade Master can basically finish off units at range as well as up close very effectively. I still think the most viable option, though, is Ranger Psi Sharpshooter, because it gives you the most versatile skill set of tools to use. What you'd have to do with the Ranger, though, of course, is to go entirely down the blade tree. Instead of getting running gun, getting concealed. That way you still get some of the Scout benefits, while still having all of the awesomeness of the sword tree. Also meaning that after the first reveal, you don't have to keep your Scout off to the side doing nothing when you could be in there shredding it up. So you, in a sense, get to choose when you actually need a Scout and when you want to keep him in the fray. Alright, so back to the tactical phrase. Since we've made most of the moves that we were going to make on this turn, we've dashed pretty much everybody. Nobody has any moves left except for our sharpshooter, and I believe our phantom has one move left. And I'm about to make a very stupid tactical blunder. So with all of his movements intact and ready to go, and his grapple up, I'm like, let's put him in a good position just in case we discover any more pods. Now, I know better than to think that there wouldn't be a pod on the roof because I've already encountered multiple. But I decided to go ahead and do it anyways. Let's just see how, in a bad situation, we can recover with this particular type of composition. And lo and behold, a pretty nasty pod with 2 Archon's Hide dodge and one of the most powerful units in the game, a Gatekeeper. Well, let's see what our options are. So here are some of the tactical thoughts going through my head at the time. Fortunately, we used Grapple, so all of his movement is preserved. We can cut our losses and bail and then go into Overwatch. Or we can do a little bit of damage, take one of these guys out, and then bail. But how would I go about actually doing so? Since I don't have lightning hands, I can't get my 3 pistol shots off. Not that I would want to anyways, because that would leave him in an unflanked position. I do have Serial up, which means we could snipe them down one by one, but to do so they need to be weakened. And really, I don't have anybody available that can weaken all of them enough to kill or damage enough of them and then escape safely. In spite of these now obvious factors, I decide to bring in my Phantom and see if maybe we can at least dwindle down one of them enough and then escape safely so that there's less to deal with next turn. So I've grappled on, about ready to get into position. I realize there's probably no way to move into a position where I'm going to have line of sight and not be revealed, which is kind of mistake number 1. One of the really powerful benefits of these Phantom Concealed Soldiers is that they get plus 25 aim and 25 crit. Now on this Phantom, I've equipped Talon rounds, which give you increased chance to crit, and I've equipped a weapon mod, which gives me even more increased chance to crit, effectively meaning that if I hit on any one of these Archons, they're going down. Now, I do a poor order of operations here, not realizing that pretty much after I shoot with my sniper or his pistol, I can move him and get him out of harm's way, whereas with my ranger, unless she gets a kill, I can't. Since I always get implacable in my Phantom Rangers, meaning they get a free movement after a kill, and I always get untouchable in all my Rangers, meaning the first shot against them will miss after they get a kill, a lot depends on her getting a kill. But the thought goes through my head that I can get a shot off, activate Serial, kill this guy with full movement, get another shot off on an Archon, and then bail. Well, it was a poor thought process because he's still out of cover, whereas she has cover. He still needs to get out. But I take the shot anyways, like an idiot. And of course, the first shot misses. Again, the benefit of rapid fire is, statistically, if you have a 50% chance to hit and you fire 2 shots, you should hit with 1. And in this case, I got lucky and crit. So now, while it was a crit, it still wasn't enough to finish him off. Now, fortunately, I can make my life a little bit easier in this situation by finishing him off and getting my sniper out of there. But again, if I had just taken the shot and then finished him off with my ranger, I'd be in a lot prettier situation. So I was still trying to figure out how to inflict maximum damage and get away scot-free, given that I had just put my ranger in a semi-vulnerable position regardless. I realized pretty quickly my options are limited. I'd like to be able to shoot the other Archon twice, use face-off to take them both out, but I am still faced with the dilemma of being in a position flanked by a Gatekeeper, which means the really only option I have is to take my one shot, finish off the one Archon, cut my losses, and get out. So here I perform a pretty unnecessary action of activating the Wraith Suit's phase ability, which allows you to walk through objects, even though I had already moused down and seen where I was heading was well within my 1 movement range anyways. But, moot point, mission's almost over. But, cool thing is, you get to see it kind of in action, although in a minute here, we're going to showcase the full potential of that activated ability. While it may seem like things are going to get very bad very quick, there's another little hidden benefit that we have built into this Wraith armor: dodge. So even in a flanked, fully exposed position, there is still a chance for glancing blows like that. Whereas that should have at least been a hit or a crit, and probably taken her down to very little health, it wasn't. Now, if this Archon hits me, I'm still probably in a pretty safe position. And yay, she survives. Now, I've experimented with not only using the Wraith armor, but also the PCS upgrades that grant increased dodge. Very handy, can make it so that you almost never get hit or always get glancing blows, but you sacrifice the speed, which in my experience has just been too good to be true. Though, if you don't have access to the speed PCS upgrades, of course dodge is a great alternative. So first things first, we got to get her out of harm's way. Now, a little bit more useful use of this. I activate it anyways just to be safe. I want to make sure that I have all the options at my disposal when deciding where to move her out of harm's way. I realized pretty quickly I don't want her anywhere in line of sight of these guys. I want to get out of line of sight, and so I can conceal, and they can't even target me. So, we pop conceal. Boom, she's safe. Chances that they'll find her, flank her, and be able to shoot in one turn, 0. So, now how are we going to deal with the rest of these fools? Well, fortunately, the cool part about bringing 2 Grenadiers is you have a lot of options for opening up line of sight and or dealing damage indirectly. Now, in hindsight here, what I probably should have done with one of these Grenadiers is aim a little bit more towards the left side of the building so I could open it up to give line of sight to my blue screen round carrying, rapid fire shooting specialist who could have walked up and probably made short work of this gatekeeper. Instead, though, I decided to go to maximum damage to the targets themselves, hopefully shredding armor and seeing if maybe my ranger can come in from the back and finish him off. A little side note about the mechanics of blue screen rounds. First, they are amazing. Second, they don't nerf any of the regular damage to non-mechanical units that your unit will do. They just add a flat amount of bonus damage from each shot on the unit with them equipped. Very handy. Now, before I actually got proximity mines, the first opener I would always use to break concealment would be an acid grenade or acid bomb. The reasons being, it will shred armor. They're usually clustered when you're concealed, so you can hit every single person in that clump, and it's going to apply a damage over time effect that'll continue throughout the next couple rounds while you try to whittle away all of their forces. Frankly, the concealed Overwatch, it just leaves you way too exposed. Just pop one of these grenades, you're going to deal a bunch of initial damage, and maybe even open up yourself if you already have the Reaper and or Sharpshooter's special ability, the opportunity to just lay waste to their entire squad in one shot. Now this next skill that you're about to see, you'll be familiar with if you played XCOM Enemy Within, the blaster launcher. In XCOM 2, it can only be acquired by getting Mark II heavy armor and happening to get lucky when doing the research for experimental powered weapons to unlock the blaster launcher itself. It's a great powered weapon. It really abuses line of sight. And again, I really should have focused more on the left side of the building to open this guys up to blue screen rounds, but it wasn't really being friendly. I realized pretty quickly that doing direct damage and not opening up line of sight for the rest of my troops to be a pretty poor tactical decision, even though I did get some substantial damage off on them and shred pretty much all of the Gatekeeper's armor. So, not totally a bad decision, but I still would have chosen to shred more of the line of sight obstacles between me and the rest of my troops. So, fortunately, we still have our Sword Ranger available to grapple, meaning he's got a lot of options as well. After surveying the damage from just the blaster launcher and seeing exactly what movement locations I can move and who else can maybe even get to the rooftop, I realized pretty quickly the closest pillar is going to be my best bet. Since nobody else can get up to the roof anyways, what the heck. After moving into position, we decide not to repeat the same mistakes of a couple turns ago. We're going to hop in there, finish off that Archon, and hopefully get our post-kill benefits of being unhittable. Fortunately, his guaranteed shot is still not up, so I got to roll the dice. And the dice were not kind to me. But I feel like any XCOM video is not complete without getting XCOM'd, where even with a relatively high chance to hit a target, you kind of get screwed and you got to pick up the pieces. Knowing that I have a lot of versatility and options here, it takes me a minute, but I quickly realize that our specialist is going to be our savior here. I've spec'd into Aid Protocol to not only give basically the plus 40 defense that will make her almost unhittable, but it's also going to grant her a covering fire overwatch shot, meaning whoever fires first at her this next round is going to get fired upon first. And just in case, I set these guys on overwatch in case one of them wants to peel over the corner and just take a shot on one of these flanked positions here below. So I'm playing a little bit safer, kind of hoping that maybe some of the acid will do the work for me. Now I was hoping that the Archon would be the first one to attack me so that I would actually get the untouchable skill, making the Gatekeeper completely unable to hit me. Even though I have high defense, I still don't want to risk it. Unfortunately, that does not happen. And we miss our reaction shot. But we're sitting on 40 plus 40 plus 25, 105 defense. It's got a pretty low chance to hit. Yep. Now I fairly quickly realized that it's beneficial when the Archon walks up, because I get the Blade Master. But then this fun little glitch happened where he hopped below me, it procced, and then he teleported through the roof somehow. That's a fun little bug that you'll see probably patched pretty quick. But lo and behold, all of that dodge from the Wraith armor is still paying its dividends. Thank you, dodge. So, having not blown that cover, my options are still pretty gimped. I've got my Ranger Swordmaster up top. She might still be able to get a shot in, weaken him a little bit. Probably not kill him, he's got a little bit too much health. And my Phantom Ranger is super low on health, and she's probably the only other person in range enough to do anything. So, logically, I gotta heal her up and get her into the fight. I want briefly to go back to the subject of running one Ranger. I think it's a mid to late game type strategy just because for most of the early game you will need your Phantom Ranger to scout ahead. And having two Rangers is handy just because they are some of the most versatile troops in the game early on, and you probably won't have a Psy Soldier high enough level to use anyways. Now as far as spec is concerned, again, you go entirely down the sword tree, replacing Run and Gun for Conceal. The reason, of course, being Reaper and Run and Gun are essentially mutually exclusive, and since they already have Slash as a built-in Run and Gun, it's kind of a nerfed ability nowadays. Now I can't understate how useful a Phantom Ranger is early on. They are incredibly useful. I've run one on every single squad up until pretty much this point. The problem with Phantoms, though, eventually catches up in the fact that half the time they're not in the fight because you're taking advantage of their scouting and conceal abilities, which can nerf your ability to really handle some of the heavier units you'll encounter, again, in the mid to late game stages. And hopefully by that time you've been leveling a Psy Soldier enough to actually make use. Also, the sword tree is pretty hard without Reaper. Now, lining up a sword attack can be a little tricky sometimes. It's not a precise science, but it's still better to do a right click from the tile you wish to execute a sword attack than it is to actually use a sword attack icon directly from the bar, because those tend to put you in a more precarious, let's say uncovered position than if you just right clicked to do the actual sword attack itself. So with Reaper, I get to actually execute that guy with a guaranteed kill and fire my weapon. But unfortunately, it's just not enough to finish off this Gatekeeper. So now I got to find somebody else who can get into a location where I can finish this guy off without themselves being uncovered in the event they miss. And here's where another great skill comes in handy. Just like Saturation Fire, the Shred Storm Cannon has a similar cone of effect and also shreds armor, but you don't actually have to have the shredding talent as a Grenadier for it to still shred armor. Again, this is another experimental powered weapon. And you can aim it up into various cones. This case worked out perfectly. Again, she's got salvo, so heavy weapons and or grenade launches mean I still get to shoot or perform another action after I actually do launch or shoot. So now it's pretty much just a matter of wrapping things up, planning our X4 charges, and seeing if any other crazy obstacles come up along the way. I just got to decide who to position what where in case anything does come out of the blue in unexpected locations. What I tend to do towards the end of these missions, since on the X4 planting ones you're actually able to place where the drop site, or the pickup site rather, for your soldiers will be, is I put them all in one central location. So I'm tactfully kind of readying everything for when I need to actually do my extraction, which will be in probably the next turn. And lo and behold, they are going to drop a couple more troops onto the battlefield. And rather than just evac, which I could do super quick, I'm going to make their life a living hell. And also use this opportunity to showcase how amazing blue screen rounds actually can be. Just remember, though, that on these particular missions, and I think they're some of the only ones where you can actually choose where to drop your evac site, you can use that to your tactical advantage and drop it in a place that would keep you a lot safer than otherwise. And again, I always think it's wise that when you're pretty safe in range of actually planting the X4 explosive, exfiltrating the person who planted them, you already kind of plan on putting your guys in a safe position to evac and get it ready to go. You could technically evac everybody, have your X4 come out last 2 turns later and evac him and still be fine. It's totally up to you how you want to plan your escape. Now here, fortunately, we do actually get to see how the phasability can be very advantageous. I cannot get my guy out in less than maybe 2 or 3 turns. I'm going to have to go all the way around through this door. It's going to add a couple more turns that I don't want, especially since the reinforcement drop is coming. I'm just going to go ahead and circumvent that entirely and run through the wall. Now we're in a great position to actually get off maybe a couple shots next turn once this bad boy lands. Now it's worth noting again that I could have just placed my evac site right on top of that ranger who I just ran through the wall and evac'd him. And then just moved everybody else into the evac zone and evac'd them as well. Remember, even after you dash, you can still evac. You do not need an extra action to actually perform the evac. You can dash into an evac zone and evacuate anybody. So I could have placed it on top of him after he even moved and just evac'd everybody and not had to deal with this last reinforcement drop. But this is the A team. They can handle it. Plus, I'm sure everybody wants to see the blue screen rounds in action. One thing to be cautious of and always take note of when encountering these advanced or Mark II mechs is they will always come out of a reinforcement drop and if discovered alone, almost immediately drop into Overwatch, meaning that whoever discovered them, if you're not concealed, or if you have any snipers or long-range people that can shoot them and take them out of Overwatch, must be utilized before you start moving your other troops into position to deal with them. So our massive Overwatch retaliation left only the advanced mech standing. Now, one thing I tactfully forget as I'm trying to make this ending pretty funny is that he's still on Overwatch. So I place my evac zone close enough that I can pretty much put everybody in there, get a shot off, and evac him, forgetting that this guy is in Overwatch. Now, I need to shred his armor at least a little bit before the blue screen rounds can really reach their full potential, so I move into the evac site. Oh, and there's the Overwatch that triggers. Fun times. No biggie though, not too much damage, and actually getting gravely wounded and recovering gives you more will. So here's an example of why chain shot can be kind of precarious. Since he's not holo targeted up already, I had a 55% chance to hit on the first shot, effectively making this entire skill go on cooldown for no net benefit. This is why chain shot. And on that note, before we do anything else, let's get our holo targeting shredding grenadier up here to do a little bit of damage. Or at least holo target him. Either or. Alright, shredded, holo targeted, a little bit of damage done. Probably a pretty easy bet that we'll be able to finish him off with our rapid fire blue screen round specialist here. Now, you'll notice that the plasma rifle by itself has a 7 to 9 base damage spread. But when we put our blue screen rounds guy here, you'll see right off the bat 12 to 14 damage, effectively adding 5 to the minimum and maximum damage flat. So it'll still fall within that range, but you're guaranteed to do at least 5 more damage on every hit. As a rule of thumb, I generally don't advise to be as blunt-headed and aggressive in your tactics when playing each mission. I was able to do this in this particular one because I wanted to showcase how planning up front can really yield more dividends on the back end if you ever do actually run into any sticky situations or you have a timer or clock that you're running against. My squad composition video is kind of meant to spark the conversation on exactly that and hopefully drive your imagination into finding other unique combinations with your tactical team that you can bring to the fore and help all of us figure out some of the funnest ways to play this game and make a great squad. I would like to, and if there's enough popular requests for me to make one, create a video which kind of describes the other mechanics in the game, namely what types of buildings there are, how many of each you're going to need, how to staff them, what missions to prioritize as you start the game out, what dark events are, how to prioritize those, how to game the system a little bit to minimize the avatar project from expanding, etc. So if you guys want that, go ahead and show me in the comments and I'll make it so. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great one.